Destruindo a farsa histórica do ninjutsu.
Agora posso me mover com liberdade.
E você fica aí, achando que é um ninja só que enrola uma camiseta preta na cara, cortando garrafinha PET no quintal? Acorda pra vida, menino. Se você fosse um português do século XVI e encontrasse tanto muçulmano assim na sua frente, você só não morreria se fosse muito criativo. Mas se você vive no século
tipo hoje, né?
XXI e só quer saber
Também. Caras vão com acessório extra no corpo.
como usar a sua criatividade, você tem a EBAC, Escola
Ué?
Britânica.
Do nada? Oxi.
Então vai lá e aproveita tudo que é diferente pra vocês hoje, indo direto ao assunto. Uma das sensações mais legais pra mim aqui no Brasão de Armas foi ver como que vocês curtiram a série Destruindo Mitos da História. É a série mais assistida aqui no canal, fácil, e foi muito legal ver vocês dando esse feedback pra mim e até pedindo pra eu continuar destruindo a infância de vocês com novos mitos. Vocês gostam de sofrer, né, camponeses? Não é possível? Mas como pedido dos meus camponeses aqui no Brasão de Armas é uma ordem, aqui estamos com 14 vídeos na nossa série. E teve até um aqui especial que eu fiz só porque vocês não pararam de me encher a paciência. Destruindo os maiores mitos dos ninjas. E que bom que eu ouvi vocês e eu fiz o vídeo porque foi um dos que eu mais gostei e um dos que vocês mais curtiram também. E nele eu mostro grandes especialistas no assunto que ajudam a gente a entender quem foi o ninja de verdade e que quase tudo que a gente acha que sabe sobre o ninja foi criação da mídia. Claro que você tem que assistir aquele vídeo lá se você não assistiu ainda. E se você já assistiu, assiste de novo, porque tá muito legal. Só que tem mito naquele vídeo que, na minha opinião, era
Boa noite, Matheus.
o mais importante de todos, e eu achei que valia
Me passei.
a pena fazer um vídeo exclusivo só pra ele. O ninjutsu. A arte marcial dos ninjas. E já tem um problemão nisso aí. História é uma ciência humana séria, só que tem um monte de gente por aí usando o nome dos ninjas e a fama deles pra ensinar uma farsa
Tá ao vivo no name.
histórica.
Aí, ó, esse é um daqueles vídeos que eu tenho que passar pro gatinho e falar. Fazer pi no minuto 2:50 do vídeo do Thiago Braga.
Só que meu objetivo aqui não é julgar essas pessoas, porque não me interessa o que elas fazem da vida delas.
Bando de mala.
Por isso, meu objetivo aqui nesse vídeo é muito simples. Olhar pro ninjutsu pra tentar entender se ele é de fato uma arte marcial histórica ou não. Porque é exatamente isso que a maioria das pessoas buscam quando pensam no ninja e nos ensinamentos dele. O objetivo desse vídeo é mostrar que, de acordo com os documentos mais importantes sobre os ninjas, nunca houve na história do Japão uma
Oi,
arte
Matheus. Obrigada.
marcial corpo a corpo ou de esgrima criada pelos ninjas e chamada de ninjutsu. E que se ela não existiu no passado, tampouco ela pode existir no presente. Então qualquer arte marcial moderna que use o nome ninjutsu deve ser encarada apenas como uma arte marcial moderna e não histórica. E portanto essas mesmas artes marciais modernas não são relevantes para o nosso estudo. Também meu objetivo aqui não é desincentivar as pessoas a praticarem a suposta arte marcial que gostam. Isso iria muito além do objetivo científico do nosso canal. O que eu pretendo aqui é expor o mais objetivamente possível todo o aspecto histórico que envolvia o ninja e essa suposta arte marcial dele também, para que as próprias pessoas possam chegar às suas próprias conclusões. É por isso que hoje nós vamos deixar os principais documentos que falam sobre o ninjutsu e sobre os ninjas falarem. Não nos interessa meras interpretações apoiadas por adeptos de qualquer arte marcial moderna que tenta justificar e fazer alguma ligação com o ninja histórico e o ninjutsu para justificar os seus ensinamentos hoje. Então esse estudo aqui não vai levar em consideração o ninjutsu enquanto uma fé e que deve ser uma arte marcial que deve ser aprendida e entendida no coração. Porque, afinal de contas, estamos falando de uma suposta arte marcial histórica e não de uma religião japonesa. Ou estamos? E esclarecimentos feitos, vamos direto ao assunto. Vocês vão assistir agora uma entrevista especial e exclusiva em língua portuguesa com um dos maiores nomes da atualidade na tradução dos principais manuais ninjas do mundo. Eu entrevistei um arqueólogo britânico que liderou um time de tradutores e historiadores japoneses que juntos foram responsáveis pelas traduções em inglês mais completas dos mais importantes manuais dos ninjas. Liderados pelo mestre de arqueologia Anthony Kamis e a tradutora e linguista japonesa Yoshi Minami, nós temos aqui os principais manuais ninjas, começando pelo primeiro, a Bíblia do Ninja, ou para aqueles que falam japonês arcaico, samuraico, tão bem quanto eu,
Só falo os das ruas.
Kai, que significa 10 mil rios fluindo juntos. Indo para o segundo manual mais famoso dos ninjas, nós temos ele, o mestre ninja mais famoso da história, Hattori Hanzo, no seu livro Shinobi Hidden. E agora vamos para o terceiro mais famoso de todos, o Shoninki, escrito por Sanjuro Masataki. Essas 3 obras aqui são leituras fundamentais para qualquer pessoa que queira entender de fato qual era a história dos ninjas, como eles agiam, que instrumentos eles usavam. Em outras palavras, esses 3 livros aqui representam a vida do ninja. E é sobre esses manuais fundamentais que foram traduzidos com tanto carinho por Anthony Cummins e seu time que nós vamos estudar a partir de agora. Então, senhoras e senhores, chegou a hora de vocês assistirem a essa entrevista fantástica com o arqueólogo Anthony Cummins, que liderou esse trabalho fantástico, e eu tenho certeza que vocês vão gostar demais. Então, meus camponeses, eu tô aqui com um convidado muito especial, é o Anthony Cummins, que bondosamente aceitou o convite para essa entrevista aqui. E é claro que eu vou legendar a entrevista para vocês entenderem bem, porque é um papo muito legal, que vai acrescentar demais, especialmente
sobre a
história...
O vídeo, na verdade, ficou pendurado quando a gente tava vendo sobre ninjas mesmo, mas não passou.
Do Japão, falando só sobre os ninjas. Então tenho certeza que vocês vão curtir demais. Então, let's go. So, Sir Anthony Cummins, thank you very much for coming again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
By the way, did anyone ever made this silly pun in an interview with you? Like Cummins?
Nope, nobody's ever made it before. Nope, not yet. You're the first. You're number one.
Okay, I'm really proud of that, okay? So, please present yourself to my audience. They are
Fala da BioA dele.
really, anxious to know who you are. Who is this nice Englishman that I'm interviewing right now?
Right, okay then. My name is Anthony Cummins. I am 44 years old, and basically my mission is to find the history, the real academic history of the Japanese ninja. Now, I was originally one of the ninja fans. I like ninja fighting and ninja stars. But after I'd done my university degrees, I started to look at the ninja closer, and I realized it just wasn't correct. So I traveled to Japan. I put together the historical ninjutsu research team, and together we have gone around all of Japan collecting as many ninja manuals as possible, and we've published them in English for people to read around the world.
Fantastic. You are also a master's in archaeology, am I right?
Yes, I've got my bachelor's in ancient history and archaeology and my master's in archaeology, theoretical archaeology from the Victoria University of Manchester.
Very nice to know. So I have all your books here, at least the 3 main books concerning the ninja historical thing that we are looking today here. So we have the most famous one here, that is the Hattori Hanzo instructions. Nice. How could you be a ninja following the instructions from Hattori Hanzo, the most famous
aí você tá judiando o cara.
Of all. And then we have the Bible, the Ninja Bible, okay? Perhaps because of the, the shape of the book, I don't know. It's called the Book of the Ninja, the Bible, because it's, it's really a lot of pages here.
People term it as the Bible of Ninjutsu. They sort of term it as the Bible of Ninjutsu because it goes through everything you need in ninja. I can explain that later, actually.
Yeah. And then we have this other one here. That is the Shoninki, the true path of the ninja. Is there a true path of the ninja, Anthony? Please tell us.
Yes, there absolutely is. There is a true path of the ninja. And if you listen to all of this interview, you will know it by the end.
Fantastic. You heard the man. So let's go straight to the point. Anthony, please. Everyone here in Brazil, in Portuguese language countries, they want to know one thing specifically about ninjutsu. This is the main point. That's why we are going direct to it. So ninjutsu. Was it really a historical martial art used by the ninjas or not? Please.
Okay, so the word martial art is difficult here. What we mean is, did the ninjas have a specific hand-to-hand fighting skill with swords or shuriken or anything like that? The answer is no, they did not. There is no evidence anywhere for the idea of a hand-to-hand ninja combat system. It only comes from the 20th century, and it comes from one man, and that's it. All of this, like we call this the Bible of Ninjutsu. This was written by Fujibayashi Yasutake in 1676, and he wrote everything he could possibly think of to do with ninjutsu. There is no fighting combat style. It is infiltration, it is deception, it is spying, it's commando tactics, it's psychology, and it's espionage within warfare.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, que interessante.
Because when we look back to the history of the ninja, Anthony, where specifically in time are we looking at?
Right, so what you've got to realize is there's 2 things here, looking for the word ninja or looking for ninja-like activities, okay? So number 1 is the word ninja. The word ninja is actually 2 ideograms in Japanese, which are pronounced correctly, shinobi no mono. That doesn't really start until the late Sengoku period. But the term shinobi itself, which is sometimes an abbreviation for ninja, is just used as an abbreviation. We find that in 1375, roughly, in the Taiheki War Chronicle, where they're specifically mentioned types of people known as shinobi. However, if you want to go about ninja-like activities, all the way back in ancient China, when they came across and came to Japan, we have Chinese style spies and Chinese-style thieves in Japan 1,000 years before the word ninja even comes about. So what we're doing is we're balancing trying to find the word ninja and trying to find ninja-like activity.
Yeah, because it's curious, because when you look back to, the historical ninja, there are virtually no manuscripts before the Edo period. I think that, it reminds me of the Bushido, the famous samurai code, in which, there's some kind of a code of honor that all samurai throughout history were supposed to follow. But if you look back before the Sengoku period, we find nothing. Even inside the Sengoku period, we don't have this evidence written down. This code actually being written down that all samurai throughout Japan were supposed to follow. Everything, all of a sudden, people started to sit and write down things about the past. So it's really curious to know that, in the climax of the ninja and the samurai, there's really nothing being written. So we have to wait for this turbulent period to stop for people to start to write. So I think it shadows somehow the perception that we have concerning the past about, look, we are talking about Sengoku period. It's like 150 years of war. And there's nothing being written there. And then, we go back to the future and we have people writing about the past. So how does that affect the accuracy of the history in itself, in your opinion?
Well, we have this black hole, basically. You're correct. There's nothing before. So we have novels and great epics, and they talk of this thing. But actually finding the way the samurai fight, finding what the ninja did, is almost impossible before the year 1600. We have small snippets, and they go back. And what you find is these books, when they were written in what I call the rise of dojo culture. All of the wars had finished. Everybody was very busy in the wars. They were invading Korea. They were fighting the Chinese. The Japanese were very busy up until like the year 1600. But then what we find is there's something called the Ronin problem. Mm-hmm. And the Ronin are basically, they were okay in the Sengoku period. You could go and be a Ronin and get hired anywhere. But when in the Edo period comes, they stop them and you suddenly have a lot of samurai with no jobs. So now we get a lot of educated people who are following, they're being pushed in Confucian ways, they're being pushed in writing and everything, and they suddenly start writing down all their tactics, all their techniques. And you find it happens about 3 generations after the war. So their grandfathers were in the Sengoku period, and the grandsons start writing all these manuals. So Fujibayashi is writing in 1676. So he's probably born in, say, 1650 or 1640. So he's 40 years old. His grandfather is going to be about 70.
Yeah, one cannot
maybe
be
60.
Yeah. One cannot be really sure about writing things that happened many years, many decades, even 100 years before. So people, things started to get really confusing when we advance in time and go back through the Edo period. So I think that's the main problem.
There are problems with the ninja manuals because they are written after the period, but they definitely all represent espionage, the same types of skills and infiltration. We get a solid. What we do find is that absolutely from about 1560, there is no debate that the word shinobi no mono, shinobi comes up, and absolutely it pops up, and then it's there across all of Japan. So we have this idea of these specialized military people who were very good at espionage and commando tactics, and everyone in Japan agreed on this word and agreed what they did. And actually, it's from this one. This is The Secret Traditions of the Shinobi, the Hattori Hanzo one. That Hattori Hanzo is only a small part of it. The other section is called the Gunpo Jiyoshu, and the Gunpo Jiyoshu was written sometime around 1612 by a man who was in the wars, who either fought against Tokugawa Ieyasu or was became his retainer afterwards. And he
Eu acho que ele já falou que os ninjas nem eram tão rápidos assim. Acho que naquele vídeo do ninja que a gente viu, não sei qual foi a live, o velhinho também falou isso.
The shinobi are from Iga and Koka. They're really good. They do this job, and he explains it. And he's got nothing to gain from that. Nothing. And that document is not published till much later. And people are saying the same thing in the same time period. There is no way that the ninja didn't exist, but they may have different names as time goes backwards.
This is very interesting, really. So we are talking, just to summarize here. So the ninja, or more correctly, the
ninja que falava em espanhol.
Shinobi no Mono, am I right? So
yes.
The ninja and the Shinobi no Mono, they are real. The ninjutsu as an art is true as well. We have that in many scrolls throughout Japan. So the problem is, ninjutsu was not considered and was not viewed as a martial art.
Não era uma arte
That's
marcial.
Yeah, all the documents,
hand-to-hand combat,
all over Japan, there is no hand-to-hand combat specific to the ninja. Now, of course, in these documents, they are warriors and they're talking about fighting, but they say we should learn to use a sword, or we learn to use normal words like kenjutsu, ei for quick draw. You know, they talk about these words, which are common words across Japan. So we spoke about True Path of the Ninja. This is based from Natori Ryu. And Natori Ryu, the man, is called Natori Sanjuro Masazumi, and he was one of the lead tacticians for Tokugawa Yorinobu, who was like the son of Tokugawa Ieyasu, and he run Kishu domain, you know, Wakayama there. And this samurai was one of, like, he wasn't personally very high, but he was a retainer to one of the highest samurai in Japan, and he was teaching the local samurai all about military arts. And he's got 30 scrolls, and there's like how to do this, swimming, you know, fighting, and of course ninjutsu, how to infiltrate, how to spy. It clearly fits into the historical framework of Japan. But today, everybody wants to pull the ninja out, pretend they're separate, give them a fantasy martial art, give them a fantasy image, like James Bond, and that's it, then they become popular.
Yeah, and that leads us to the next point. In your opinion, Anthony,
Não vai
what is the main
aprender a lutar
problem
com
concerning
Chaco.
those, ninja myths, or the Shinobi no Mono myths? Which myth do you think are the most...
Existiu, mas é meio que uma fake news, né? Dos animes. Enganaram nós.
most relevant for society here, please?
Hoje é Halloween.
Well,
Daqui a
first of all,
pouco.
is the suit, the ninja suit. We know that the ninjas didn't wear these suits. However, there's a little bit of a tricky conversation because
Peraí. Eles também não... Não, calma aí. Eles não usavam essa roupa, não?
Relevant for
Aqui é demais pra mim aceitar.
society here, please.
well, first of all, is the suit, the
Esse aqui eu não aceito.
ninja suit. We know that the ninjas didn't wear these suits. However, there's a little bit of a tricky conversation because the suits did exist, but they were used by thieves. So in Edo period Japan, you were restricted to your ward, your area, and you were known. People knew your face, and there was gates everywhere. And if you
Daqui a pouco vai dizer que não existe esfera do dragão. É o que eu tô esperando.
wanted to infiltrate, you need to mask up and close your face. But in the Warring States period, we're talking about ninja going across massive places and invading castles, and if they're just sneaking around a castle, it doesn't matter if they've got a mask on or no mask,
Yeah.
you're going to die.
You
Ah, mas eles ficavam mais camufladinhos, pô, de preto, tudo preto, cara. Não dá pra ver o preto no escuro, mano. Não dá.
You remind me of The Last Samurai. There's a scene in which many ninjas are running after the samurais. They are just taking swords from the back and, like, all masked with black masks and, like crazy guys.
Não fala isso, não fala isso. Mas você tá me magoando aí, ó.
Complete bullshit.
Yeah, it's
Como é,
like, so,
Sakura? E se ele estiver sorrindo? Se estiver sorrindo, vira o Richard.
Tô com os caras aqui, tio. Os caras tá discutindo comigo que nós tá no ponto errado. O Richard mesmo, tio. Não cala a boca. Tô falando pra ele que nós estamos no ponto certo, mas ele tá falando...
Cadê o Richard?
Cadê o Richard? Mas cadê... Ai, cara. Nossa, velho, mas não dá pra ver, sem maldade, velho. Dá um sorriso.
Tá vendo como funciona? Como assim é bobagem? Como assim? Não tem como ser bobagem, mano.
so why do you need a mask? What are you doing it for? You're going to die anyway. You're like, we are going to kill you. You're not from our village. You're not from this castle. And you've got to remember, samurai had a very strict set of passwords. So samurai were divided into groups of five. And you had a password for each person and a captain, and they all fitted inside of this very tight system. So all because they didn't want people to infiltrate their system. So there's no way a person, even without a mask, like, what's your password? And they had tags on there with their names and their units. There's no way you could get through. So you have to stay. You either have to kill someone and steal a password and steal a tag, because not everybody knew everybody all the time. Or you have to be in the dark and not be seen.
Como você vai ver no escuro, então?
But we know the ninja didn't wear masks because they had tricks like if somebody's coming, you cover your face with your sleeve.
Very
You use Japanese ink and cover your face. Or we also know they had magic talismans, like magic hairpins, and they would use them and chant for the moon to hide them. There's even this trick where they would pick up poisonous snakes, venomous snakes, and pull their teeth out with pliers and then throw them away. They do a magical ritual and put it in their hair, and their open face to become hidden.
So it seems like Naruto
Não, mas aí...
is really historical. I can tell.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, even though these things are like nowhere near historical, at least they've got the magic bit inside Naruto.
And what about those jutsus that they do with their hands? Do you know about that? Are they historical as well? The disappearing jutsus, fireball jutsus, and I don't know, man.
Well, this is called
Peraí, ele
Kujikiri.
vai falar que Isso aqui também não existia? Tá mentindo.
right? So you've got something. So this is another myth. Is Kujikiri. And everybody, Kujikiri and Kuji-in. Kujikiri is Rin, Pyo, Tosha, Kaijin, Retsuzai, Zen, Aun. And that's the spell. Or you get Rin, Pyo, and you go through all the hand gestures, which are too hard for me to do.
Did you learn that from Naruto as well?
I've learned that from an ancient scroll. That's actually real.
Olá!
But these are from China.
Isso é verdade.
And
Eu
they're
já tirei uma foto com o ninja. Vocês sabiam?
used in both Taoism and Buddhism, and they predate the samurai. They're way before the samurai.
Interesting.
And the ninja are pretty much part of the samurai culture. This idea that the ninja are separate from samurai is not true. A ninja is a samurai. It's just a samurai with a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you've got an archer, sometimes a spearsman. You've got people who check the stars.
Very
You've got
interesting.
people who can cross rivers. And you've got commando samurai. Commando samurai are called shinobi.
Samurai is like a
Yeah,
social
that's-
class in a way. Samurai is like a social class,
Yep.
and then the ninja is a profession, a job that the samurai is supposed to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Espionage
You've got
this way.
lots of jobs for the samurai, loads of jobs, and one of them. So if you have an army list of samurai in the Sengoku period, you've probably got about 80 jobs or 100 jobs, and just one of them is shinobi. But yet all the other jobs are not famous.
Yeah.
But we love shinobi, you know, like that. Nobody ever says gunbaisha.
Yeah,
So gunbaisha is another job, and that is to check for esoteric chi and magic. It's cool, but nobody, and more like Naruto than ninja. But no, it's not shinobi. Nobody cares.
do people,
So
do
these
people
hand
today
Saiu, pô. Saiu na foto. Ele não é. Parece que ele não é tão rápido assim. Aqui, ó. E ele me ensinou a fazer o negócio assim com a mão. Ó, os pezinhos. Ele abre as pernas grandes, cara. Fala dele.
do people today learn how to identify the chi?
No, but we've got the manuals. We've got manuals on it. I can tell you how to do it. But, you know, actually, that chi question is difficult because
Yes.
the word chi or ki, it's pronounced, it definitely appears and it's considered. But we don't know if it's actually smoke in the sky and you see it in smoke or cloud formations.
It's interesting because all the time we when we read, for example, Bansen Shukai,
Pô, hoje vai chover o dia todo. Se pá, eu tomo um lamen, hein?
that sometimes is understood as Mansen Shukai, according to
Yeah.
Stephen Turnbull as well. It's interesting because
Um
we
motor?
see lots of those esoteric stuffs being inserted inside the ninjutsu. So it's quite difficult to separate, pragmatic actions by the ninjas and the esoteric ones. I think they are interconnected somehow.
Oh,
Always.
without doubt. Without doubt. You actually see a trend in Japan, though. So in Japan, they start to get less and less interested in magic. So by the time of Takeda Shingen, Nobunaga, the magic is sort of dying away. And they still have it, but it's...
Você e o ninja. Eu e o ninja. Ai, gente, sou muito pequeno. E a camomila ali embaixo. Eu nunca tinha visto isso. Nossa, isso foi em 2022? Gente, isso faz 2 anos.
ではこの右手を左手に収めてはいあれございますでこれを胸の前で
Isso faz 2 anos.
強火の構えでございますではまっすぐ立ったままで
Não, faz 2 anos. Aqui, ó. É que eu vi aqui que tá escrito.
お願いいたしますでおそのままでそのままでお願いいたします
Que perdida, cara. Que perdida. Nossa, eu sou muito pequena, gente. Com vergonha. Com vergonha.
Literally, armies are just going on, real tactics
Sou muito pequena.
then. And actually, the Portuguese have brought the guns in. Suddenly standing there and doing a spell and getting shot with a musket. It's like,
It's not
Eu tenho 1,53.
going to work, man.
it's the same as when Christians wear the cross and they say the cross will protect
Yeah,
me. You're like,
yeah.
well, stand in front of that gun and let's see how long it protects you.
Yeah, that doesn't
You know.
prevent them to use armor, even if they have
Yeah, yeah,
they
they-
have
O
a
cara se abaixa e ainda consegue ser mais alto.
cross
Well,
behind it.
they put crosses on the armor. Why are you
Yeah.
wearing armor? The cross protects you.
It's
What
a
are you wearing
double
armor
it's
for?
a double layer of protection. Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty much. But I actually researched this, and even in tanks today, people will write Christian prayers and they put Christian things in tanks. And the idea is to protect us. So even though it seems a bit strange that we have these magical things for ninja, people still do it today. People forget that Christianity or Catholicism has its own magic and its own spells.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the Lord's Prayer will protect me. It's a chant.
But it's interesting because if we go to the 14th century or 15th century, if you go to Fiore, if you go to Lichtenauer, they are really pragmatic. Like, you take a sword and put it through the eyes of your opponent, and that's it. Yeah. Okay? No magic, no belief in God. You just do that. Now, if we go to Japan, if we go from Kenjutsu to Bujutsu, there's always this philosophical, esoterical, and even theological approach that is connected with the physical aspect.
Well, that's actually, so this is a bit of going back to the original question, is we have this Dark Ages in Japan. So the samurai started roughly around the year 1000, or just before, depends on when you want them to start. And they finish in the year 1900, roughly. So you've got about 1,000 years of samurai, but we have no idea what they were doing before 1500. We really have very little idea. But what we do find is that there is a very sharp increase in the Bushido and also in magic and Zen inside of swordsmanship. Oh, it's the Zen way and it's this way. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. By the time you get to World War II and you get the idea of post-World War II and they really Zen and Aikido and everything, but the seeds for that change start 400 years before. Now, it's still a brutal time. You have to remember that the Edo period, people call it the period of peace, but I think it's more a dictatorship. It is really strict. You can be executed for nothing.
You weren't allowed to be violent.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do anything, and your hairstyle is checked, your clothes are checked, even the type of gate on your house is checked. They make sure everything's done. It's like North Korea today.
The communists would disagree with you.
I said the best way to understand it is Sengoku period is like war-torn Africa. There's warlords and they do whatever they want. Whereas Edo period is more like a dictatorship where there's one guy at the top telling you, and he can send a message and have somebody killed at the other end of the country for no reason whatsoever.
Nice analogy.
And that actually happened. There was one samurai who did something wrong, and he did something so wrong that they destroyed the entire line, and they had everyone executed of his family. They'd done nothing wrong. They woke up one day, and the executioner stood up and said, "You have to commit suicide today because your great uncle, who you've never met, did this."
Oh my gosh! So all of a sudden, many myths, not only about the samurais, but specifically about the ninjas, start to pop up. Not only in Japan.
O negócio era hard, tá?
But
você vai ter que cometer suicídio, amigão.
I mean, in the West, in the 20th century. But it's interesting because if you go back to your translation, that is the Hattori Hanzo, in volume 4, there's a passage that is really interesting to look at. In the first paragraph, it says here about the appearance, the clothing, and everything else. Hattori Hanzo himself telling the ninja what should they do, how should they get dressed. Be sure to get used to the regional ways by observing and listening carefully. Learn to act in similar ways and disguise yourself as a local. So, Anthony, have you ever heard of a city or of a clan in Japan that has ever,
a série Shogun é muito boa. Ela mostra essas paradas. Pô, deve ser legal
mesmo. They can use masks for the ninja to disguise that way.
No, never. Imagine, all the ninjas are only trying to infiltrate this one clan who've got black masks on and ninja swords, and they're all, they're dressed as local.
Perfect disguise. The masters of disguise.
That's exactly how it disguise. No, not at all. If you want to imagine a ninja, there's certain ways to imagine them. So when the army moves forward, the army moves forward, the ninjas are well ahead of the army. And they are checking the area. They're like forward scouts. Now, there's two types here. There's the ninja that's dressed as the local, and he knew, his lord said, because he was a samurai, he's a samurai and he's a ninja, and the lord has said, we're going to invade that province, that place. I want you to go there and open a shop. I want you to become, or just go to as a Ronin and get hired by them. And he might do this 2 years before, and he spends all his time coming from a different place. He changes the way his sword is made, he changes his hairstyle, his accent, everything so he can infiltrate, and he stays there as a sleeper agent. Now, the people who are moving forward with the army, the shinobi in the army, they're all dressed in the army colours, and they've got their flags, and they've got spears, and their job is to go out at night and clear the area, make sure nobody's attacking them, and checking all the traps and ambushes. There. So if you want to imagine a ninja, they're different depending on what they're doing. If they're just collecting information, they're dressed as local peasants, fishermen. If they're openly going out and saying we're going to protect the area, they're just in their normal armor, going out to do their thing.
Yeah, this would be an all-out war, an all-out battle. They want to be identified in a battle. It's interesting because if you go back to, for example, to the 16th century, to the Portuguese-Japanese dictionary, we have the word there. We have the shinobi in the...
Tá bom.
the meaning, it's a spy. So
Yep.
we have this information for hundreds of years from now. So there's nothing new. The Portuguese 500 years ago have said that. So what is the point? How do you think, Anthony? So we are going to the next question now. How do you think everything started to be messed up concerning the ninja as a historical figure, an important one, and then we have, this nice guy that is, that people want to be?
Right. So this image of the ninja with black suit, chainmail arms, Naruto style thing, where does that come from? It actually has many different threads, and it starts many hundreds of years ago. Like in the Edo period, you had thieves, and you have these thieves there, and then they are not, nobody says they are ninja, but they are like what's called nusabito, which is sneak thief, basically. And what we find is that even in the early Japanese cinema, ninja are like wizards, they're sorcerers, and they're dressed normally, and they're doing magic spells, and they're floating around. But then, by about...
Calma aí, eu perdi o fio.
And what we find is that
Calma.
in the Edo period, you had thieves, and you have these thieves there. And then they are not, nobody says they are ninja, but they are like what's called nusabito, which is sneak thief, basically. And what we find is that even in the early Japanese cinema, ninja are like wizards, they're sorcerers, and they're dressed normally, and they're doing magic spells, and they're floating around. But then, by about the 1910s, there's the stories of the Sanada Braves, who are ninjas, but they infiltrate, but they're just samurai. They look nothing like the ninja you would imagine. But as we creep on, people start mixing things up. Like they start mixing the thief image, and then they start adding a bit of armor and chainmail. And then by about the 1960s, we start seeing headbands, and it starts getting popular. And then the masks start coming in, and then shuriken.
Mas a estética é legal.
Connected with anime, and then literally it builds up. So that only really, and Turnbull has done this. Turnbull has done the same research. That image of shuriken, black clad, assassin, creeping with a bit of magic only comes from about the 1950s animation. Before that, you don't see it. You can see thieves, and you can see shuriken, and you can see all the pieces, but they are never put together.
But please, at least tell me that Jiraiya, the Japanese series, is okay. Please, my audience need to know.
No,
Come on,
and you can keep your route. However, as we say, though, if they put magic into it, it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
So this idea, so if they get rid of the shuriken, no shuriken, but you can have like magic and no face mask, you're getting close. You're getting close.
Yeah, perhaps people should look at Naruto more than, for example, The Last Samurai. For a historical
I hate The Last Samurai. I hate films.
O Último Samurai, historicamente, é completamente bizarro, até porque é o Tom Cruise, né?
So, Anthony, we talked about the historical ninjutsu. It was a real thing. It existed.
Yep.
It was the ninja art, like magic, like methods of infiltration. It's all well documented, including the Portuguese documented it as well. So, although it was not a martial art.
No, and it died out. That's the one thing that we have to remember. There is no evidence anywhere in the world of it continuing beyond the samurai time. In fact, we have documentation from at least one or two lines say, this is the end now, we don't do it anymore. And we know Japan radically changed after the samurai period. So Meiji period, Showa period.
There's no evidence, Japan even in Meiji Restoration. The ninja simply disappeared there. Mm-hmm.
And not only that, Gingetsu Ito, who was the man who said brought back the ninja sort of boom, he openly says that we don't know anything about the ninja. Well, and he quotes from the Shoninki and says, this is all we really know. And it was from people like him where they started collecting the ninja scrolls, and then the Bansen Shukai and the Shinobi Hiden. And now then they started, but that's the 1950s. Mm-hmm. So between like 1890 and 1950, there was almost nothing known about the ninja, just what they understood. It was in their culture. They had movies, they had animation, but nobody knew what the ninja actually did. Mm-hmm. It took someone to go back and recheck the scrolls. Because remember, Japan quickly changed. They went from being samurai culture to a Western power, which defeated Russia in like 1905, 1906, around there. They turned their entire society on its head and took up everything. Yeah. The ninja just disappeared. The same as the samurai. There was no samurai in World War II. Yes, there's Bushido and the Hagakure, but they were not real samurai. They're not fighting as samurai.
It was just an idea.
Warriors.
Yeah, it was just an idea that they had to search for to explain, for example, this miracle defeating the Russian Empire, this miracle, this economical boom that the Japanese experienced. It's more of an ideology than a real thing, a historical thing.
And they didn't use samurai tactics. They used none of them as modern warfare. You know,
muito legal, muito bacana, mas não tem um Japa participando dessa call? Ué, você tá contestando a história, amigo?
There's a samurai.
Você tá falando de lugar de fala?
Called Kusunoki Masashige, and they made him like the hero of the day. Kusunoki Masashige is famous for killing, following orders until he died. And they said, oh, become like him. And he's suddenly a war hero. But in the Sengoku period, he was outlawed. His name was outlawed. They hated him. They said, that guy, no, he represents the other empire. Let's not do that.
The bad
so
thing.
It was just
Falta
all
representatividade.
manipulation. Like, of course, every generation manipulates history. But what's interesting is there's no ninja manipulation. There's just comedy. There's just cute characters. There's just animation characters. And for some reason, this animation cutesy character got took seriously all of a sudden. And that's it. And it becomes a real thing. And people are engaged and really love it. But it's like, it's a made-up fantasy by somebody like 2 generations ago.
Yeah, that people think today that it's really real. And here we are in the 21st century, Anthony, and we talked about the historical ninjutsu. It was not a martial art. It was an art, not a martial art.
Yep.
And now we are here, 2023, and there are still people, selling this idea that they possess this historical ninja martial art, this historical shinobi no mono martial art. So what is the link? Is there any link? How come can anyone say that they have this, ancestral martial art, that they are allowed, they received it through their heart, through their soul, and they are now able to pass to their students the secret art? What is the link? Is there any link between the past and present to justify these guys?
Right, there is, and I have asked these guys many times to produce any form of documentation, anything. There's been books published or anything, but when you read the books, when you go through everything, their historical documentation is zero. It's zero, and it all comes from one stem. But before we go into that, let me explain how strange this idea is. Yeah, it's the same as I'm an Englishman, and you speak Portuguese. It's the same as me and you saying, or me saying, I'm a Knights Templar. I have this secret tradition that's been passed on to me about how to fight the Knights Templar way. And it's special to only Knights Templar, and it's different to how everybody else fought with Knights, and it's been passed on to me. I've got no documentation. All of the history I give you doesn't fit into actual history, but please believe me, because I'm English, and the English have Knights.
And believe me, because the Portuguese are the keepers of the Templars.
Yeah. It's like you would say, you've got a secret Portuguese thing. But because they're Japanese, and because we have this, I call it the Japanese spell. We love that. It's like magic. If it's Japanese, it comes across as just amazing. We love it, and we lap it up. We're like, yes, more. But there are more than one set of people who claim to be real ninjas. Yeah, there are probably about 4 in the world, or 3 in the world, and one of them's dead, Fujita Seiko. There's a couple of others, but never have I seen a piece of information. But there's only one system which claims hand-to-hand combat. The others claim espionage and commando tactics, but this one only claims hand-to-hand combat. And it only appears for the first time in about the 1950s. And it's only a handful of people out of millions. And even then, the people who were collecting information in the 1950s said, no, this is fake. Even the Japanese said, no, this is fake. But because an American went over and then brought it to Black Belt magazine, it then went all over the world. And of course, Karate Kid was released. And we get all of You Only Live Twice is out there just before it. And we get this James Bond Karate Kid. And the big one that nobody talks about anymore is Shogun. He's like the TV series Shogun, and that was massive, and that was 1979 to 1980. And after that, we just take this fantasy character from one person who made it into one martial art, and that's it now. It's taken over the world, and it's my crusade to try and remove that fantasy and give you it's sort of like, come on guys, we have what they actually said. This is what they said. But,
Mas eu acho que... Será que tem alguém que vê, tipo... Naruto e acha que é, tipo, tudo real? Acho que não.
You have to forget that, because they can't both be right. They're opposites.
Of course, yeah.
They can't both be right.
So, there is one guy. There is one guy responsible for that. I think the name...
Mas é real. Tem que ser maluco. Então, tem que ser... É porque... É mágico, né? Então,
Takamatsu.
é legal saber a precisão histórica e tal e tudo, mas acho que... Será que tem alguém que acha que tudo é real? A raposa de 9 caudas existe em Hiroshima.
Am I mistaken?
Nope, that's correct.
No meu coração é real.
So there was a man called Takamatsu. He was born in the late 1800s, which sounds amazing. Like he's from,
We have the Last Samurai and we have the Last Ninja.
Yeah, we got Last Samurai, Last Ninja. And basically, he was a man who was, even by somebody who did a biography of him, even like if you read closely into the biography, he claimed to have defeated professional sumo wrestlers. He claimed to have defeated like 60 gang members on a bridge. He claimed to have been an assassin for the government inside of China, but there's no record of him ever being in the army. He claimed to be the last ninja. It was just this lots of claims. Whether he was a good martial artist or not is irrelevant. So this ninja martial art that they do, this modern ninjutsu, it might be good, it might not. That's the viewer's choice. What do you think? But it is not historical in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And of course, he taught a man called Masaki Hatsumi, and out of only a handful of people, and basically a man called Stephen Hayes came along, studied from Masaki Hatsumi, went back to America in the late 1970s, and it blew up from there. And of course, with Karate Kid and the Shogun and all these sort of things, it ran out of control. And suddenly now, these Japanese have got what's clearly a fantasy being taught as real, and they're getting a lot of money for it.
They have this aura, like this magical aura. If you look, for example, to Hatsumi, he specifically because he's the founder of the school. He has the right and the ability. He received the ability to pass the ninjutsu on as a martial art. So I think that's the point you are going to enter.
This idea is called Ninpo Taijutsu, yeah? And that means ninja way martial art. Now, often now they try to backpedal, they try to change their story and say, actually, we do taijutsu, not Ninpo Taijutsu or Budo Taijutsu, which means samurai way martial arts. But nope, his certificates all say Ninpo Taijutsu, which means the fighting arts of the way. And it's just simply, A, it's not found anywhere in history, and B, it doesn't fit into the history. And it's quite ludicrous to think that's there. But they've marketed it very cleverly. They have really marketed it to the West, and they've made a lot of money from it. And I suppose for anyone who's making that much money, it's difficult to then say, well, actually, it's all fake, guys. Imagine they claim to have 150,000 students.
Naruto é tão real que serviu de inspiração para a história bíblica.
Across the world, when they've sort of done their figures across time and now. And you've got to turn around to 150,000 people and say, well, actually, guys, it was not true. We're sorry. They're never going to do it. They're never going to do it.
Yeah. So that's why we are here. We are trying to tell people that we have the historical documents, we have the historical aspects that we have to look at least. By the way, I think you should be praised by your fantastic translations, Anthony, because before them, all we had were the older Japanese texts. All we had were the Japanese texts that, it's almost impossible for anyone outside Japan. Actually, you had a Japanese translator that helped you.
So what happened was, yes, I was one of the Bujinkan members. I was throwing shuriken and throwing sand. I was on ninja. And I downloaded the original Bansen Shukai. I downloaded all the pages. What it was is nobody had ever taken the time to actually translate them. Because, as you can see, it's colossal.
Yeah,
it's so thick.
E lá ele, hein? Cara, eu lembro de ver um filme ninja, não sei qual era, o dragão, não sei o quê, não sei. Lembro de ver um filme ninja quando eu era muito criança, assim, e desde então, sempre que eu sonho, tipo assim, eu sonho que eu vou voar, tipo assim, ai, como é que eu vou explicar? Eu lembro que eles pulavam e aí era um pulo muito alto, sabe? Tipo, assim. E aí eu já sonhei muito, muito, muito fazendo isso só por causa desse filme. Tipo, de pular e aí flutuar, assim, um pouco.
Just one of them. So I found Yoshie Minami, and we got talking, and she said, well, my English, my master's degrees, my research in history.
Ou a minha memória é doida.
Her linguistics, she's a professional translator. We can put this together. We've got a monk that helps us. We have a club that reads the old Japanese writing. I've got my fingers touching so many people because I'm not stupid. I know I can't do it, and I know normal Western people can't do it. We're talking about reading medieval Japanese, handwritten. So I knew that to do that was too difficult for just one person. So this team, we've put it together, and of course people have checked it, and my enemies are all over the world have checked it. Now I know where we've made small mistakes, and we go back and look at the publications and say, I don't think it was that.
Yeah, every translation has its problems.
And as we say, to a certain extent, it's an interpretation. But I hope we've kept it as close as possible to what they mean. And before I did that, before it took me to put that together, there was nothing. Nothing.
So
it was just Hatsumi books.
You went to Japan, you assembled a Japanese team, and then you have this fantastic piece of work here. So that's the point, Anthony. I think to summarize everything here, before those translations, before your work and other works that are about to come in the future, to clarify this matter even more, we had to rely on words. Japanese words, these guys from the Bujinkan. Actually, they even trained the FBI. So all those propaganda worked in their favor. But this is nothing. If we look to history,
it's not there.
Yeah, we find nothing. So that's the point.
That is why I never ever talk about the ability of martial arts, whether it's good or bad. If they enjoy it and it makes them better fighters, that's good. But all they have to do one thing is say, okay, this is not ninjutsu, this is taijutsu, or this is jujitsu. That's it. That's all they have to do. But nobody wants to let go of that ninja icon. They're like, no. I have seen people try to argue everything. And I say, all you have to do is understand it's not historical. No, they'll cling to it with their lives.
And that's the only point. It's not historical and period. We're not talking about a funny thing that people like and people want to believe. If people want to believe, no problem at all. But we're talking about actual history. We are talking about documents. The older documents, the Basen-Shukai,
A realidade é chata, pô. Eu prefiro os animes. Prefiro.
the Shoninki, Hattori Hanzos, and many others, they don't support what are being told, what are being, taught today. They
In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's the opposite. They say, don't go and fight. You don't need. Yeah.
They invalidate modern ninjutsu practitioners, I think.
Yeah. So my question to anybody listening who's actually a practitioner of like this modern ninjutsu, have you ever seen a scroll with your school name on it? There's plenty of pictures of old scrolls because I've seen that they put the Bansen-Shukai and they put Shoninki, but is there a single one that was written in samurai times with your school's name or any sort of reality, any sort of way that you can say this is proof? The answer is no. It's zero. Nowhere. And if your proof for it is nothing, why do you believe it? Who are you believing? A man you've never met who's making lots of money off you. Why believe it? Because the answer
Deixa
is they
acreditar,
want to
cara.
believe it.
That's right.
They want it.
That's why we are here, Anthony, to accomplish this mission, to inform people that they have to understand that we have a history to preserve, the Japanese have a history to preserve, and all we have here, in the modern sense of the word, all the people here are trying to make money with their good faith. The good faith of many of the practitioners that are going there to learn something historical that is actually ahistorical.
Yep, absolutely. But I'm often asked, what was it like to be a ninja? And the only way I can say, now you're in South America, are you?
Yeah, I'm South America, Brazil.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's the same. So this is the reality of being a ninja, yeah? You would have to disguise yourself, disguise your accent, and infiltrate the drug cartels.
Mas como que disfarça o olho agora?
Yep. And then once you've infiltrated the drug cartels, your friend would then infiltrate their building and together you would burn it down and try to kill all the drug cartels and then escape with your life.
Só podia trabalhar com os iguais, né? Não dá pra infiltrar muito além dos iguais.
And if you say one thing wrong or you're wearing the wrong thing or you have the wrong tattoo, they will just chainsaw your head off. Yep.
Eita caralho, com uma motosserra?
That's the reality of being a ninja. So when you realize that versus like, oh, I'm going to dress in black and run around, you suddenly go. So a lot of people who are real ninja really died in the past and did some really, really dangerous things. And I think we should respect their legacy by studying the real
não existe
history.
mais, né?
You can still study jiu-jitsu. There's plenty of martial arts. Just study the real ninja as well.
Yeah, history tells no tales. So, Anthony, thank you very much. It was a really clarifying chat. I'm completely sure that my audience will love this conversation and are enjoying it right now. So,
Tá, não. Você tá destruindo os sonhos da rapaziada.
again, thank you very much. I'll put your channel in the description below for people to access and have more content coming from you. You are a really nice and incredible lad, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Concluindo nosso estudo, senhoras e senhores, dentro dessas páginas aqui nós não encontramos nenhum sistema de arte marcial e nem de esgrima japonesa que foi criada pelos ninjas. Portanto, do ponto de vista científico, não há qualquer evidência de qualquer arte marcial que tenha sido criada pelos ninjas. Nem de combate corpo a corpo e nem de esgrima que os ninjas ou os shinobis chamassem de ninjutsu. O que temos aqui dentro dessas páginas são táticas e ferramentas usadas para espionagem, recheadas de esoterismo e misticismo japonês, esse sim conhecido como ninjutsu. E essa é a essência do ninjutsu. Pelo menos uma vez na vida aquele seu amigo otaku fedido teve razão.
Ué,
Naruto é muito mais ninja de verdade do que esse bando de ninja com camiseta preta enrolada na cara. Aliás, o que nós sabemos bem através
de camiseta preta são bom massa.
dessas páginas dos manuais ninjas é que os próprios shinobis deveriam conhecer e saber muito bem usar as artes marciais usadas pelos japoneses da época, porque essas mesmas artes marciais já existentes seriam usadas na função do shinobi, que nada mais era do que espionar. Então qualquer tentativa hoje de justificar o ninjutsu como uma arte marcial e muito mais, uma arte marcial histórica, sempre vai vir de adeptos dessas mesmas artes marciais, pessoas que estão dentro e são ligadas a essas mesmas escolas de ninjutsus modernas. Muito raramente vamos encontrar historiadores respeitados e idôneos que tenham esse ponto de vista dentro da academia. Sabe por quê? Porque eles não querem virar meme na internet. E talvez o maior exemplo desse tipo de pesquisador que tente de todas as formas justificar a validade histórica do ninjutsu seja Kasen Zougari na sua obra História Secreta do Ninjutsu, onde ele próprio, um praticante e mestre do ninjutsu, tenta flagrantemente estabelecer a conexão histórica que há entre o ninjutsu de hoje e o ninjutsu do passado. O único problema é que ele falha miseravelmente. Olha só, na introdução ele diz que seu estudo não é sobre mergulhar em estudos esotéricos, mas um estudo preciso, longe de paroquialismo. Só que nas linhas seguintes, olha só o vacilo que o Kassen dá, meu amigo. Ele deixa claro sua aproximação com Hatsumi Masaki, o velhinho japonês de cabelo roxo, criador da mais famosa escola de ninjutsu do mundo, o Bujinkan. Só na introdução já dava pra ver que esse estudo não tinha como dar certo. E não deu mesmo, porque na conclusão ele teve que recorrer justamente ao que ele disse que não ia fazer: esoterismo e paroquialismo. Olha aí no capítulo 7. A essência do ninjutsu não pode ser explicada em umas poucas centenas de páginas. E lembra que ele disse que não ia fazer paroquialismo? Dá uma olhada nisso aqui. É mais apropriado oferecer vários aspectos da prática pelas experiências do Takamatsu. Para quem não sabe, Takamatsu é o tal do último ninja. Segundo ele, Takamatsu descreve a essência do ninjutsu. Sabe o que o titio Kaká tá dizendo aqui pra gente?
Conta pra gente, nós queremos saber.
É que a melhor definição do ninjutsu não é uma definição científica apresentada por historiadores respeitados no assunto. A melhor definição do ninjutsu vem do Takamatsu, que foi mestre do velhinho Hatsumi, e que foi mestre do Kaká. Se isso não é paroquialismo, eu sou bailarino-chefe do Circo de Soleil. Continuando, a prática do ninjutsu é um reflexo do indivíduo, para aqueles que têm olhos para ver, da personalidade escondida do praticante. Ou seja, se você for míope, escolhe outra arte marcial, meu filho. Para Takamatsu, a prática
Não dá pra mim. Tô cega.
do ninjutsu revelava a verdadeira visão do coração do praticante. Esse coração é formado com resiliência duradoura e assim adquire fé. A prática requer um coração espiritual que está batendo e vivendo. Será que esse coração espiritual infarta também? Porque senão eu vou querer um. É, meus camponeses, complicado um trabalho que se diz acadêmico terminar desse jeito, hein?
É mesmo.
Então, senhoras e senhores, não é porque o velhinho Hatsumi sabe dar vários golpes legais, já apareceu até como consultor do filme do James Bond e tem um cabelinho roxo bonito e que ele é considerado um tesouro nacional pelo governo do Japão, que ele vai ter recebido qualquer arte ancestral através do coração, rapaz. Enfim, se você quer estudar de verdade o ninja e a cultura histórica do Japão, comece por essas traduções fantásticas desses manuais, que são nossas principais fontes primárias sobre o assunto. Então busque as melhores informações possíveis dentro das fontes primárias, ou então de historiadores sérios e reconhecidos na academia, como por exemplo, um que eu já citei várias vezes aqui pra vocês, o Stephen Turnbull, no seu livro Ninja Unmasking the Myth. É um outro historiador fantástico que mostra pra gente, dentro desses próprios documentos, como era o ninja de verdade e como hoje continuam usando esse ninja pra lucrar e que se passam por herdeiros de uma arte secreta que já tá morta há muito tempo. Aliás, o professor Stephen Turnbull é inclusive citado como referência de estudo na própria obra do Kaká, o mestre de
Ou
ninjutsu
seja, artes marciais do Japão só existe o sumô? Ué, cara.
parcial e antiparóquia. E é claro que eu vou deixar o link de todas essas obras aí na descrição pra você. Aliás, eu vou colocar também aqui na descrição o canal do Anthony Cummings, onde ele coloca mais detalhes e faz vídeos bem interessantes e específicos sobre ninja e samurai, que eu recomendo demais que vocês assistam, que é um conteúdo científico bem relevante e interessante. Então, senhoras e senhores, espero que vocês tenham gostado e aprendido com esse tipo de formato diferente de vídeo, com essa entrevista também que eu particularmente fiquei muito orgulhoso de fazer, que possa esclarecer muito mais a quem for interessado no aspecto histórico de como era o ninja de fato. E um recado importante agora: se você conhece alguém que pratica ninjutsu, não ofenda e nem ataque essas pessoas. O meu objetivo aqui no Brasão de Armas, ao divulgar ciência pra vocês, não é fazer ataques pessoais a ninguém. Eu já deixei isso claro que nunca vai ser o tipo de conteúdo que eu vou trazer pra vocês. O que a gente faz aqui é discutir ideias e nunca atacar pessoas. E no final do dia, felizmente, a gente vive numa sociedade livre, onde as pessoas têm direito de escolher fazer o que bem entendem e de acreditarem no que quiser. Até que ninjas ainda existem.
Que merda!
Então fechamos aqui, espero que vocês tenham gostado e aprendido com mais esse vídeo e a gente se vê no próximo Brasão de Armas.
É isso.
Até mais.
Ele tá explicando
Já
isso.
vou começar.
Ui, calma. Medo de ser assassinado por um ninja, né, meu filho? É, tem que explicar aqui. Pô, não é... Ih. Ah, é muito bom.